Everyone, and welcome to our benefit event this evening to honor Dr. Bernard Lown. My name is Dr. Brita Lundberg. I'm trained as an infectious disease physician, and I'm chair of the board at Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility, which was founded by Dr. Lown and colleagues in 1961. GBPSR was the first chapter of what is now PSR National, which numbers 23,000 members in 24 chapters across the country. Now it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Dr. Ruth Mitchell.
Thanks, Brita. My name is Dr. Ruth Mitchell. I'm a neurosurgeon, and I'm joining you from unceded Coast Salish territory in Vancouver, Canada. I'm the chair of the board of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, or IPPNW, which was founded by Dr. Bernard Lown and his wonderful colleagues in Boston and around the world in 1980. Today, IPPNW is an international federation that counts as members thousands of health professionals in 60 countries. So tonight, we not only honor Dr. Lown's legacy, but also thank him for giving us a reason to get together. And indeed, so many in this work wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for his encouragement and his inspiration. And we particularly want to acknowledge members of the Lown family who might be joining us tonight. It's a real honor to have you with us.
I think Dr. Lown would be pleased to know that this gathering in his honor is an online event that can be seen by people around the world. I recall Dr. Lown's prescient prediction in an inspirational talk that I heard him give in Newton, Massachusetts around 2002, where he predicted that the internet would be a phenomenal means to share knowledge and advance the common good. And so, just as he predicted, here we are gathering together this evening in celebration of and honoring his legacy with a remarkable musical program that we hope will inspire all of us to further his vision of a healthy and peaceful world as we work to raise awareness around the twin existential threats of the climate crisis and nuclear weapons.
As your Masters of Ceremony, we would like to give you a brief idea of our program tonight. First, we will hear from a few of Dr. Lown's friends, his colleagues, and remarkably, from the granddaughter of Dr. Evgeny Chazov, the Russian cardiologist who received the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize with Lown on behalf of IPPNW.
And then we'll hear some music from a select Longwood Symphony Orchestra quartet, followed by some brief words about our current work at IPPNW and GBPSR. Then, as you know, this year we are thrilled to welcome cellist Yo-Yo Ma, a personal friend of Dr. Lown's, who has chosen one of Dr. Lown's favorite composers, a special Bach repertoire. Our send-off will be Haydn's Symphony in C, played by the entire Longwood Symphony Orchestra.
We would now like to recognize and offer our thanks for the extraordinary generosity and humanity of our sponsors for this evening event. Now, they're not just making this event possible, but also all of our important work. Thank you.
Good evening. We would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to our generous sponsors. These sponsors include Dr. Ira Helfand and Dr. Deborah Smith, who ask us to join with Greater Boston PSR to build a national campaign to prevent nuclear war. This campaign is called Back from the Brink. Visit preventnuclearwar.org to get involved. An anonymous donor who asks us to reflect on this question: what hath man wrought? Brigham and Women's Department of Medicine, in recognition of Dr. Bernard Lown's lifelong leadership on nuclear weapons abolition, and in recognizing the continued need for medical professionals to remain involved with nuclear and climate advocacy. Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, supporting the mission of our organizations in our quest to raise awareness of the most pressing public health issues of our time. And Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, in honoring the memory of Dr. Bernard Lown for his scientific achievements and determined advocacy. Doctors Carl and Susan Racine, who are grateful to GBPSR for vital advocacy work against the life-threatening dangers of nuclear war and climate change, We are living at a crucial moment, and these efforts are more important than ever. And Dr. Lachlan Farrow, who thanks our organizations for carrying on the legacy of Dr. Lown, who is one of his most important teachers and mentors for over 40 years. You can read excerpts of Dr. Lown's speeches at bit.ly/d Dr.-Lown-never-whisper. The Harvard Medical School community honors the lifelong work of Dr. Bernard Lown and the advocacy of our organizations. First Republic Bank is proud to support our community. Eastern Bank is committed to recognizing the good in our communities and celebrating the work of our organizations. Tonight's musicians include a quartet from the Longwood Symphony Orchestra and cellist Yo-Yo Ma. We would like to thank the members of our terrific honorary committee for 2021. In addition to the previous sponsors listed at the symphony, concerto, and sonata levels, we would also like to thank our prelude level sponsors. And our minuet and saraband level sponsors. And last but not least, our chakan and passacaglia level sponsors. Passacaglia level sponsors continued. If you donated to us in the past few days, your sponsorship may not be listed in the booklet. However, your contribution will be included on the event website. And we extend our gratitude towards our strong and engaged event planning committee. On Monday, October 4th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be co-hosting a program with the Massachusetts Medical Society entitled Nuclear Weapons, a Public Health Issue. This course will offer 1 CME risk management credit. It's free to attend, but pre-registration is required. You can visit the homepage of gbpsr.org for the registration link and for more information. And lastly, if you hadn't had a chance to make a contribution and would like to do so, you can visit our event page, which can be found under events at gbpsr.org.
Thank you so much. So I get now to welcome the wonderful Doris Sommer, PhD, Professor of Romance Languages and African American Studies at Harvard, and Director of the Cultural Agents Initiative. Doris.
Delighted to be here. I'm so honored to be speaking in this gathering. I knew Bernard Lown as a neighbor and a friend and as a great reader. I can say he was a great reader. I'm a teacher of literature. I feel that I can say that with some authority. And he read widely, novels, history, memoirs, biographies, poetry, and he would interrogate everybody about the literature they were reading with his pen and his narrow notebook always in his breast pocket close to his heart. He challenged me and everyone else, pointing a finger and saying, "What have you read lately? Why am I talking to you? What can you contribute to me?" And I tried very hard to answer him responsibly, worried that if I weren't interesting enough, he wouldn't want to talk to me anymore. And I valued so much talking to him. But meanwhile, I understood that with time, that the questions he asked about literature and about arts in general were more about how to legitimate his own love of literature and arts. He loved all the arts. He loved music, obviously. You hear the concert preparation in his honor, theater, sculpture, painting, everything. And he was endlessly curious about different cultures. He wanted to quiz everyone more to know what else to learn than to put us on the spot. Finally, we learned that he was teasing instead of putting us on the spot. He was a voracious reader, as I say. To the right of his chair, there would be a tower of books, always under construction, always growing. In the last month of his life, I remember at the top of the pile was Stalingrad by Vasily Grossman. 1,000 pages about the siege and the destruction of Stalingrad. But what he really loved about Grossman was another novel that Grossman wrote later called Life and Fate, because that book was the mature Grossman who was the master of nuance, of metaphor, of change of mood, of delicate conversation. And that is where Bernard Lown met a great writer. Bernard was so sensitive to all the nuance, to the half-spoken communication that he picked up as a great doctor. He read people as well or better than he read books. That was his art, one of his arts. And I remember in his last month, when I would visit him, I was his next door neighbor. One time he practically giggled. He said, "I've had a wonderful life." And we all knew he had a wonderful life, a distinguished life, a life of enormous contributions, enormous effort. Look what he did with the IPPNW, his Nobel Prize, his inventions, his saving of thousands of lives, his generosity. He was a monument to humanity. He knew he had made enormous contributions, but the other life that he was celebrating, that life of joy, of enjoying every detail, every nuance, every metaphor, every sunny day, every smell, every taste of food. He would giggle and say, "I've had a wonderful life." I would treat patients who would come to me and share their most intimate problems and stories, and they would teach me things I could never learn from anyone else. And they came and they paid me for those visits. I should have been paying them. And he would laugh. Bernard's joy was unstoppable, and it ignited joy in the rest of us. And I treasure so much that joy that still vibrates in me and in everyone else to whom he pointed that accusatory finger and said, "What have you been reading? Teach me something." So that's my grateful and joyful memory of Bernard Lown. Thanks so much for letting me share that with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Doris, for sharing those personal recollections that really make Dr. Lown come so alive in our minds. I would now like to introduce Dr. Gudars Denai, who is the Bernard Lown Associate Professor of Cardiovascular Health at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Director of the Land Scholars Program.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here today in this wonderful event to honor Dr. Lown. I first got to know him 6 years ago when I was asked to direct the Lown Scholars Program at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. I would meet him almost every month for 2 hours in his living room over his study, and we would discuss anything from art to literature, music, history, politics, but mostly health and healthcare. Dr. Lown started his career as a young cardiologist in the 50s, working with the internationally renowned Dr. Samuel Levine. He soon noticed a deadly interaction between digitalis and the other drugs that were used at the time to treat heart failure. He also challenged the conventional wisdom coronary care units, which are now in many hospitals around the world. He continued his work by inventing the DC defibrillator, which is now used by many patients around the world and saving millions of lives, including his own life when he suffered an arrhythmia in 2013. In his book, The Lost Art of Healing, he mentions many examples of how he saved patients' lives and improved their well-being by listening attentively and asking important questions. His devotion to helping others live healthy and happy lives was not limited to his own patients. He cared about the entire humanity. And in his long and productive life, he established many organizations to achieve that mission. These include the Lown Institute, Satalife, the Lown Scholars Program, the Right Care Alliance, and many, many others. In the middle of the Cold War, when the US was preparing for defense in the event of a nuclear war by building bunkers, he felt a moral obligation to prevent nuclear war. Therefore, he organized physicians starting from his own living room and established effective organizations that are still fighting the nuclear war, including the two hosts of this meeting, IPPNW and GBPSR. I would like to thank you for this event, to honor Dr. Lown, and for carrying on his legacy to prevent nuclear war and saving humanity.
By 1985, we were awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace. As is often the case with the Nobel Prize, they're not really rewarding you for what you've already done. They're sending a message. This is something that the Nobel Committee thinks is very important.
And we have to find new ways to reach out. And the Nobel is laying down a gauntlet for us, that we physicians have to do more.
Dr. Lown, I think, had a mix of emotions at that time. It was, first of all, emotionally charged because we almost had a person die right in front of us. In the front row, suddenly, this guy keels over and looks like sudden cardiac death. We were doing the resuscitation, and he began to come around a little bit, but he really looked like he was dying. It was important to not let it end on that note. We had to complete what we were there for.
You know, when the crisis comes, Soviet and American cardiologists cooperate. And this crisis we face now in a big way for all humankind. And this is a very strange parable that shows we forget our ideology, we forget our differences. We do not care whether it's a Russian or American.
It shows you how deeply caring, I think, Lown really was, that this affected him on all of those levels.
Dr. Lown was accomplished in his own field of cardiology, as a researcher and inventor. In the brief clip we just saw, his own invention, the defibrillator, was put to use at the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, and the Soviet journalist was successfully resuscitated. This was an emotional moment to realize that a man was saved right in front of you, and that part of that was the device you invented. But the moment also captures how Dr. Lown reached across cultures and created bridges between countries. And we now have the extraordinary privilege of hearing from the granddaughter of Dr. Evgeny Chazov, who you just saw alongside Dr. Lown. Dr. Olga Mironova is associate professor and chair of internal medicine at the prestigious Moscow Sechenov University, and she's co-president of IPPNW Russia. I also have the great honor of working with her on our IPPNW board. Olga.
Thank you, dear Ruth, for your introduction and for the invitation to this outstanding event honoring Dr. Lown, who has played a really important role in my family's story. Unfortunately, the struggle against nuclear threat is far from being over. And the more years since World War II are passing, the more far the nuclear danger seems to many of our younger peers. We tend to forget the events of this terrible conflict and many other awful events against humanity. I'm absolutely sure that we need to start talking more with our students, residents, and young doctors about the nuclear threat and do it in an open and trustful manner. My grandfather, Evgeny Chazov, and Bernard Lown were colleagues and friends that you could see in this brilliant movie. And that was not a typical kind of friendship for those years of 20th century, to be honest. Firstly, there was no internet, no social media, no emails, just phone and letters. And another issue was, of course, the tension between the USSR and the United States. But we have an amazing example how friendship, kindness, and understanding can cross the borders and stay above any conflicts, even if they are international ones. As I already said, my grandfather was a good friend of Dr. Lown, but they also managed to save many lives because of their common work in cardiology as a team. And I think we cannot underestimate the importance of the teamwork and team efforts in the struggle against nuclear threat. I'm working now as a cardiologist and, as Ruth just said, as associate professor of the chair of internal diseases in Sechenov University in Moscow, Russia. So I can see how badly we need to address the social, environmental issues. And I would be so happy if we could manage to bring more young doctors from all over the world to the movement that has big parts of Dr. Lown's and my grandfather's souls. Thank you for your attention.
Olga, thank you so much for that moving talk and for all that you do to move this work forward, and especially for your dedication in joining us for what is the middle of the night for you in Russia. So now we will hear from the LSO Quartet. We are so grateful for the opportunity to continue our special partnership this year with the Longwood Symphony Orchestra's Healing Art of Music program. Take it away.
Good evening. We are members of the Longwood Symphony Orchestra, the orchestra of Boston's healthcare community. We're proud to support IPPNW and GBPSR, as well as honor the incredible legacy of Dr. Bernard Lown. Tonight, we'll be performing a piece by one of Dr. Lown's favorite composers, Ludwig van Beethoven. We'll be playing the first movement of his quartet, Opus 59, number 1 in F major. We hope you enjoy.
Thank you, LSO, for that wonderful music. And a special thanks to Bridget Borzo, the Executive Director of the LSO, for your help in bringing this event together. We simply could not have done it without you.
We will hear now from Sydney Enkel, who is a family nurse practitioner at the Edward M. Kennedy Community Health Center in Central Massachusetts. She's also the most recent board member of GBPSR. She'll discuss our work to raise awareness around the health risks of the climate crisis, and specifically of one of its most important drivers, air pollution due to the burning of fossil fuels.
Thank you so much to the moderators and everyone else who made this event possible. While most of the event is focused around talking about our actions to prevent nuclear war, I feel honored to have the opportunity to speak about another existential threat that GBPSR is actively fighting to address: changes to the Earth's climate. At GBPSR, we believe that it is our responsibility as nurses, doctors, and public health advocates to use our unique platform to raise awareness of the connection between the human health and the changing environment. There are many experts who could share a ton of statistics connecting these two things. I'm going to share just a few. First, globally, lives are currently being cut short by an average of nearly 2 years due to air pollution levels above WHO standards. Second, the global health impacts of air pollution are slightly higher than those of smoking cigarettes. As a primary care provider, this one stands out to me in particular because I ask patients every day about their tobacco use and caution them against the risks of that. I am never instructed to check a box or make sure that I talk to a patient about the risks of climate change and air pollution. Finally, if carbon dioxide emissions continue at their current high rate, by the year 2100, climate change-related health impacts will be responsible for double the rate of deaths per year as COVID-related deaths in 2020. Unfortunately, these risks are disproportionately borne by poorer and otherwise underprivileged communities. It's fairly clear that combating climate change is going to take work on a variety of levels. At GBPSR, we are using our voices to push back against developments that contribute to global and local climate change and environmental degradation. In the past year and a half, while much of the medical community attention has been appropriately drawn to addressing COVID-19, there have been several environmental issues raised in Massachusetts. First, a recently opened compressor station in Weymouth has had 5 unplanned gas leaks, in addition to further polluting an already overburdened community. Second, a new natural gas power plant was proposed in Peabody, which would be built less than a mile away from 2 environmental justice communities, a hospital, and 7 schools. Third, our State Department of Energy Resources has proposed changes to renewable energy standards that would allow biomass power plants, including one proposed in Springfield, to qualify for renewable energy subsidies, even though they create more carbon dioxide pollution than coal or natural gas power plants. At GBPSR, we work with local stakeholders to push back against these and other concerning developments. In some, we've made incredible progress. In others, there's a lot of work to do. I am a healthcare provider because I believe that we as humans have a right to be cared for when we are sick. But I also believe that we have a right to breathe clean air, drink clean water, things that keep us from getting sick in the first place. As healthcare workers, we cannot say that we are truly looking out for people if we aren't also looking out for the planet we live on. I invite everyone watching tonight to learn, to teach, to use whatever voice you have to advocate for that healthier, more sustainable world.
Thank you so much, Sydney. I now have the privilege of introducing Dr. Carlos Umaña. He is a general practitioner and epidemiological surveillance officer with the Costa Rican Ministry of Health. He is the current president of IPPNW Costa Rica and the co-president of IPPNW. He also is a founder of Artists for Peace in Costa Rica and the president of the activist group Peace and Diversity. Carlos.
Thank you for the introduction. Humanity faces 2 existential threats: climate change and nuclear weapons. Nowadays, as extreme weather events become more commonplace, climate change is impossible to ignore. But most people do ignore how the situation worsens the risk of a nuclear war and why nuclear disarmament is, today, more important than ever. Nuclear weapons represent the single greatest threat to the environment. A single nuclear detonation would cause a significant and irreparable environmental damage, and even a limited regional nuclear exchange would have catastrophic consequences on a global scale. Studies have shown that if 100 Hiroshima-sized bombs were to be used in a conflict between India and Pakistan, that is, less than half of their arsenal and less than 1% of the global arsenal, it would affect the entire world. The soot and debris that would rise to the atmosphere would alter the climate in such a way that the harvest times for the staple grains of the world, that is, rice, wheat, corn, and soy, would be drastically reduced, producing a food shortage that would lead to a famine that could kill 2 billion people worldwide. This food shortage, in turn, would lead to greater conflicts that could lead to a greater use of nuclear weapons. Now, a full-scale nuclear war would cause a destruction of unimaginable proportions, with hundreds of millions of immediate deaths, a widespread radiation pollution, and a nuclear winter that would destroy our civilization and possibly even our species, along with many others. Now, this scenario is not theoretical. The risk is higher than ever. The doomsday clock by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists currently marks 100 seconds to midnight, the highest risk in history. This is roughly due to 3 factors: the unstable political leadership in nuclear weapon states, previously believed by many to be stable, the technological vulnerability of high alert systems, which increases the risk of accidental nuclear detonations and cyber terrorism, and 3, climate change. Climate change multiplies the potential for conflicts over resources such as land, drinking water, and food reserves, and it increases the pressure to migrate. And the ensuing political collapse would lead to extremist leaders gaining control over nuclear weapons. Now, climate change is expensive. Conservative estimates point to a staggering $3 trillion per year by 2050 in the United States alone. Now, nuclear weapons are also quite expensive. Their yearly cost of the maintenance and modernization has been estimated to be as high as $116 billion per year. The solution to climate change must include nuclear disarmament. Climate change requires political will and resources. A large part of this capital would come directly from the substantial resources that would be released once nuclear disarmament is implemented. Moreover, the vast scientific resources and talent and political resources currently engaged in nuclear weapons could then be redirected to seeking ecological solutions. Furthermore, it is essential to channel humanity's efforts towards fostering a culture of peace, for the solution to both existential threats must necessarily involve the participation of the entire international community. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, is a necessary and urgent step in this direction. Its universalization and implementation will strengthen the multilateral regime and promote scientific and international diplomacy, which are essential elements also for tackling climate change. The time for rhetoric is over. Faced with this dual existential dilemma, humanity finds itself at a crossroads. We can either ensure our prosperity or be the authors of our own destruction. Tonight, as we honor the legacy of Dr. Lown, let us look towards the future, and let us do everything we can to protect life. We must give peace a chance. Our survival depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for reminding us of all the interconnections between the pieces of the puzzle, between nuclear weapons and climate, these hard problems that, as Sydney and you say, are not future worries, but are problems here and now, whose effects have fallen historically most harshly on minority populations, but now affect all of us. What better way to welcome Yo-Yo Ma, a cellist who has drawn international attention to the issues that divide us by using the beauty of music to give us a common language, a language that lets us realize our common ground, music that leaves us in awe of our world so that we might be inspired to better preserve it. We are so grateful.
Good evening. I'm Yo-Yo Ma, and it is a privilege for me to play the Bloch Prayer in honor of Bernard Lown, who would have been 100 years old this year. Tonight, we have a lot to honor and a lot to celebrate. 60 years ago, the Physicians for Social Responsibility was founded for a very specific purpose. I would like to play Bach's Prelude and Fugue from the Fifth Suite to recognize that time and the work that was involved in order to galvanize support for nuclear disarmament. 30 years ago, I had the great pleasure of participating in a Schweitzer symposium at which Dr. Lown spoke. We talked about Albert Schweitzer, his love of Bach, Dr. Lown's own love of Bach. And we also want to acknowledge that in the 60 years of life of this organization, you've gone through changes, life changes, and it's hard, but you made it through. I'd like to honor that by playing the prelude of the third suite, which is in many ways an improvisation. As people who are in the medical profession, you work with both your head and your heart. Bach, to me, was both a composer and a scientist because he studied human nature and nature, but he was also empathetic to human nature. So, in between the preludes, I'd like to play the saraband, which is the heart of every suite, of the third suite. And I'd like to end this evening by recognizing that the work of Physicians for Social Responsibility goes on forever, not just for human beings, but so that we humans can live and survive and thrive in partnership with nature. And to that end, I'd like to close this evening's program with Pablo Casal's favorite song, another great Bach musician, performer. But his favorite song comes from Catalonia. It's a song for him of freedom, and it celebrates freedom from the point of view of birds, from nature. So we will close with the Song of the Birds. But first, the Prelude and Fugue from the Fifth Suite by Bach.
breathtaking. Thank you so much again to Yo-Yo Ma for sharing his brilliant and beautiful music with us tonight, and for his words. To say that our work is an improvisation, I'd never thought of it before like that, but we certainly do work with our heads and our hearts. And we too hope that our work can go on forever and make the world better so that we all, as Yo-Yo Ma said, can survive and thrive. What a gift he gave to the Lown family, to Bernard Lown, and to us tonight. So pulling together all the threads that we've heard tonight, as Dr. Denai said, Dr. Lown was a superlative clinician, modeling compassion and warmth at the bedside that made him revered by his patients. But he carried the same commitment and caring into his advocacy work. He said, "I didn't view myself other than as a doctor who's trying to heal a sick planet." I'd also like to underscore Dr. Lown's moral courage. He spoke out and took action on some of the most controversial issues of his day, racism in medicine. According to his close friend, Bruce Price, who recently wrote to me, he was briefly expelled from the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in the 1940s for switching black blood for white. Who knew that that was a thing? He spoke out against the corporatization of medicine that was driving the overdiagnosis and over-treatment of myriad conditions, and the need for medical treatment and the universal access to health insurance and to medical knowledge. He formed many groups as well as his own foundation to address these issues.
But a signal issue for Dr. Lown was nuclear weapons development and the nuclear arms race, which he considered an urgent public health matter and a threat to human existence. Dr. Lown's success in his advocating on these issues, as shown in the scene where a number of doctors are resuscitating a journalist, is not a singular accomplishment. It was by working alongside many other groups around the world that a comprehensive nuclear weapons test ban treaty was approved, and that the number of nuclear weapons dropped from 60,000 in 1980 to under 14,000 today, although many thousands are on hair trigger alert. And around the bedside and around the world, it takes a team. And what we hope we've done tonight is to emphasize that we do nothing on our own. In a way, our musical program reflects that. We move from a quartet to the singular voice of Yo-Yo Ma and finish with a symphony in the resuscitation of our planet from the effects of climate change and the eternal effects, past and future, of nuclear weapons. All of our voices are needed.
Seconding that, perhaps the greatest gift Dr. Lown and his colleagues achieved when they wrote the first series of articles about the genocidal health impacts of nuclear war in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1962 was to give physicians and health professionals a voice. They understood that voicing concerns publicly about matters of human health did not come easily to the medical profession, but they encouraged colleagues nonetheless to speak out.
We gather here tonight to honor Dr. Lown's accomplishments and to see them live on in our own work and that of the groups that grew out of the ones he helped to found, PSR and IPPNW. I remember the one time I met Dr. Lown in his clinic in Boston, and he took me into the conference room and showed me his most wonderful invention, the defibrillator. As he explained to me the experiments that he'd done early on so they could figure out whether AC or DC was going to be the right kind of current, I felt that I was being drawn into this wonderful story of saving human beings from sudden cardiac death. And as he did so, he included me in the legacy he had of saving humanity from sudden nuclear death. And I feel so very grateful that at that time, as a junior doctor, just 2 years out of medical school, he encouraged me so much. I think of the accomplishments we have as activists and campaigners and as leaders in this space, where we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I'm so grateful that I had the encouragement on that day from Dr. Lown, who said to me generously, "Well, I think your only fault is that you wish to be a neurosurgeon and not a cardiologist." So we see the way in which his work connects with decades of advocacy from the Hibakusha and many indigenous peoples in whose land and waters nuclear weapons were tested, with multitudes of campaigners and activists around the world. And as we celebrate our own connections to this wonderful man, may we be encouraged and strengthened for the future, for the tasks at hand, for the work to be done, meeting the climate crisis and eliminating nuclear weapons. The best way to honor him is to honor his work and indeed honor our work together. I'd really like to invite you to please check our websites for suggestions about how you can get involved and make a difference. And I'd like to remind you about the exciting GBPSR CME event on October 4th entitled Nuclear Weapons, a Public Health Issue, which we're giving in collaboration with the Massachusetts Medical Society, but which is open to everyone all around the world and free to register. And it's my particular honor to invite you to a special high-level meeting on Thursday, September 30th. We will have the Undersecretary General of the United Nations, the President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, and the President of Rotary International, together discussing eliminating the existential threat of nuclear weapons. Please register for this free event, which I'm honored to host. This Sunday, and I know that for many viewing this, it's already Sunday where you are, so hello to you. We know that for you, it's already the International Day for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. And as we inch closer to our goal, we can see on the horizon that this is Dr. Lown's legacy, and indeed all of our legacy, playing out.
That brings us to the end of our program. I'd like to close by again thanking the Lown family, our honorary committee, our planning committee, and most especially IPPNW's Molly McGinty and GBPSR's Executive Director, Anna Baker, who have worked tirelessly pulling this program together for the past many, many months. A huge thanks to our speakers and our sponsors, the legislators, individuals, medical and other institutions who stepped forward to make this evening possible. And of course, our heartfelt thanks to Yo-Yo Ma and the LSO for providing this music for healing, music that illuminates our message. There's still an opportunity to donate to this event if you haven't already. Please use the link you see at the bottom of the screen. And please enjoy our finale, a truly phenomenal performance of Haydn's very beautiful Symphony No. 95 in C minor. Thank you all again for joining us this evening, and good night.